Have you ever wondered what a career in the wedding industry looks like? Today's guest eats, sleeps, and breathes weddings. In this episode, I sit down with Jeff Maeck and we discuss the ins and outs of the wedding industry, how to write killer ceremonies, working with your spouse, and how to balance a work-life ratio, all while giving back to the community at the same time. Jeff Maeck is a Waterloo region legend, and if you're looking for your wedding officiant or looking to be an officiant, this episode's for you, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Business and Beyond. You are joined today by Jeff Maeck, and I am your host, Brian Braga. We are two white men on a podcast. It is your favorite demographic today. Jeff, how are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing really well. It's, January is a bit of a crazy month in the biz that I'm in terms of bookings and stuff like that, but it's great, man. I welcome it. I embrace the chaotic nature of it. It's part of the deal, and I love it.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Jeff is a wedding officiant. He has his own coordinating and planning business with his wife as well. And being January, you would think that it gets slower in the wedding planning business. Is that not the case?
It's been a long time we've been in this biz now. We're almost 15 years in, and there's less slow periods for sure. I mean, most of the engagements take place around Christmas, New Year's, that type of thing. So January is a natural time. I think psychologically too, people see the flip of the year in the calendar and they're like, oh my gosh, I get married this year or next year. And they kind of get into the planning mode. So January is a pretty peak month for couples reaching out. And we're just seeing way less of the slowdown periods, which again, it's awesome stuff. But the year's a bit of a sprint to begin with. And if you don't get any slowdown, it's like, man, you're just going nonstop.
Yeah.
I dig it. I like it. It's
fun. Fair enough. Well, how did you get into the wedding planning industry in the first place?
Yeah, super kind of random, to be honest. My wife and I in younger, prettier days, we used to model in the wedding industry actually. And they lowered the bar for me clearly. They'll let anyone in. And look, I used to model suits, my wife would do dresses. And so we kind of knew everyone in the space already. Hair, makeup, photo, video, venues, all that stuff. And we had lots of friends asking us for referrals, and we were planning some weddings, helping some people out to figure that stuff out. And I kind of said to Michelle, look, I think there's probably a market for this. I'm fairly certain you can get paid to do this. I think it'd be fun. We enjoy it. We already know everyone. That's great. And sure enough, she started the biz 2012 and we did some weddings and it went pretty well. And there was kind of this husband and wife team doing some planning. And at the time, going back to 2012, at least in the region that we're in, there weren't a heck of a lot of people planning weddings. I think there's maybe only one other person. It really was not a thing. And so we were kind of right at the beginning of that, and it just grew year over year. I got licensed in 2015 to start officiating weddings as we had more people asking for kind of these more outgoing, energetic kind of ceremonies, and that's just a bit of my style. I got behind a mic for the first one. I was like, man, this is the best ever. It's super energizing, a ton of fun. And I was on a pursuit of how do you do this full time? How do I just only do this? And I'm pretty lucky that this is all I do.
Nice. Yeah, and that's awesome to hear. And I watched a couple of your videos on YouTube of you officiating. You're really good at what you do. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, so
man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're really charismatic. You make it fun. And one thing that a lot of people don't like, well, I don't like in weddings, I can't speak on other people. It's just that kind of boring. We're here gathered today. It is a wedding, but it's also a very memorable time. And having that good energy, bringing the good vibe to a wedding, it's just so mandatory to bring down the stress of the big day, right?
That's it. I always view it as hey, look, it's celebration, right? You invited your closest people here. We're having a party later tonight. I assume we want to have an upbeat, we're not mourning the fact that you guys are getting married, right? We're celebrating this. So the ceremony should be the same thing. It should be a reflection of that. Let's have some fun. I naturally like to tell stories. I like to laugh a ton. And I find most people's stories are actually pretty hilarious once you get to know them a little bit, and telling those stories, get some good laughs in the ceremonies. It's a lot of fun.
How did you transition from being the planning partner with your wife to then breaking into officiating?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it was tricky at first, especially as when we first started, we were branded as husband and wife planning team, and then as things grew, we had to add more people to the planning and coordination team to kind of handle some of the volume there, which was good. But it really started to feel when you kind of land in the sweet spot of something, and officiating just felt like that for me. It felt when some things kind of come easy, it felt like I'm not battling this thing. It's actually, this feels really right. And so it was a natural progression for me to kind of go down that road a little bit. And it was the perfect complement to all the couples that were planning the weddings, because they were kind of already looking for what I was doing. And so the kind of the marriage, to give the pun in it, but the marriage of those two things was perfect. And we worked alongside for a ton of those weddings. And as things grew from there and we brought on more staff, it's hilarious. We celebrate 7 days a week. It's a literally 7-day a week thing. I had a ceremony this morning already, and
wow.
It's wild.
Yeah. And what role does storytelling play when you're officiating?
I naturally enjoy telling stories. I think they're super funny, and I don't really do like chronological retellings of like, hey, you guys met at this point on this day, did this thing, went here. Like, that's cool. We're not doing a biography though. That's not really what I'm doing. I want like the really nuanced stories that if I told in front of your closest people, they're like, oh, this is exactly their relationship. Like, that's totally what they're like. That stuff tends to hit home way more. So those are the stories I'm trying to find. There's unique ways that I get those stories. And then because this is all I do, I spend all my time obsessing on how do you write those? How do you deliver them? How do you keep them engaging? And I write them in a fashion that's very much like old high school buddy Jeff is telling these stories. So it's like, guys, remember the time you guys did blank? And that's way more engaging than talking a little bit about like the timeline stuff. There's definitely like a method to the writing and the delivery on it, and I spend a lot of time on that delivery portion as well because look, you can have the best stuff in the world to say, but if you say it in a really uninspiring way, you're not really bringing people from point A to point B. It's kind of boring. So I spend a lot of time kind of obsessing on that.
Nice. And one thing I really love about your business is all over your website, you're very transparent about your fees. You have no hidden costs. In the FAQ, you have a bunch of other questions that are like, oh, would this be extra? And you're just so upfront about it. What are some of your core values that also resonate with your business for you and your wife?
Good. That's a good point. I mean, that's kind of the a lot of wedding vendors fall in one of two categories on the pricing thing. They'll either show like a starting at price or inquire for pricing. And I'm very much like, here's the deal. Here's what I do. Here's the price. I like to, one of the things at least I think I'm good at is I'm the same person online, on Instagram, on the copy on the website, in person, on calls. And so there's really good continuity between the three. So when people find me online, read the stuff, and then we jump on a call, they're like, oh, this is the exact same dude. So that's really important to me to be the same consistent person all the way through. I think what's really important, I mean, this whole business is relational and we've been doing it a long time. We understood very early on that, look, we need to find some great people that we trust, that we can recommend, that do incredible work, obviously, but that are also just good humans. We want to work with good people. We want to recommend those people. We want to encourage their businesses. We want them to succeed and do well. I'm thankful that in this industry, it's a very positive environment. There's some really great, talented people. In our region specifically, it's really crazy concentration of amazing creative people. I mean, you chat about Caitlin, she's an unbelievable photographer in this area. We've got a ton of people like that. So kind of core values, we really value the relational side of things. My encouragement to everyone that I kind of mentor and train in this too is to operate your business with integrity. The terms I use for it is above reproach. Like, look, if someone were to do an audit on your business, you're not hiding anything. It's fully open, fully transparent. Man, I sleep way better at night knowing there's the biz. Take a look, and that's kind of what we're about.
Yeah, and I speaking on that, like the people that you teach and train, I saw that you have a course on officiating as well. How long have you been teaching others to officiate, and is that something that you really care for? You know, like bringing the new generation of officiants to the wedding industry.
Man, yeah, that's a good one. So in I think it's 2019, at the encouragement of a couple friends who have some pretty massive YouTube followings, they're like, dude, put out a video, teach some people how to officiate, like teach them your style. It's pretty unique. And I'm not like a video guy. I've got a video guy that helps me produce all the stuff that you see on Instagram, a lot of those videos on YouTube. I mean, I lean heavily on the pros. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the guy who can create it. I'm not. So anyway, 2019, I put out this horribly produced, terrible audio video. Like, it's just not great. And it got a lot of views. It still to this day gets tons of reviews. I got tons of messages, tons of DMs, messages on Instagram, comments, all sorts of things on this process on how to write a ceremony. And that started the plan of, man, obviously there's a lot of people looking for this. I should produce a course that's like, high quality version of what I've created, offer it to them because there's a need and demand for it. Couples are looking for it. Officiants are looking for it. And so we finally, last year, put it all together, wrapped it all up into this big course, and it's been a great thing. It's been a hit with the people who have been engaged with it, and I love that. I'd love to continue that because, yeah, I mean, it's kind of what people are looking for, and they just don't know how to get there. And there's not a lot of people that do what I do full time. I may be the only person in the province I know that does this full time. Like, there's not really many people that do this the way that I do it. And because that, I'm really lucky in that all I think about is writing ceremonies. So I'm not like, man, tomorrow morning I got to wake up and worry about sales meetings or whatever. It's like, I don't worry about any of that. I worry about how do I produce the best possible thing. And so I get to create these iterations that I can then pass on to other people to help speed them along in the process of figuring things out. So that's what the course was kind of designed to do.
Nice.
First time officiant, 100 ceremonies in, doesn't matter. It's going to help you knock it out of the park every time.
Yeah, and that's honestly like that's very good for my audience to hear as well, because anyone who's looking to get into officiating around my age, obviously they're very new. So that course just being a packaged deal of, hey, this is how you can do what I'm doing and do it well. Like that's such a good thing. And also to touch on price wise, it's a very affordable course. I see so many courses that are like in the thousands. Like yours is very very affordable. Like a lot of people charge so much for courses nowadays.
And look, obviously I'm biased, but there's nothing at the quality that we've produced. There's nothing on the market like it. But we also didn't want to make it such a top tier item that it's difficult for people to be able to afford. And at the same rate, a lot of officiants, like I was saying earlier, don't do it full time. And so it's tricky for them to make a really big investment into a course that maybe they're going to use a handful of times a year, but we still want them to benefit from it. We want the couples they serve to benefit. So anyway, we want to keep the price point low, and then as we continue to add to it, we'll offer different products over the next year.
And in terms of getting licensed as an officiant in Ontario, would you mind diving into that process a little bit?
For sure, yeah. It's funny you mentioned earlier, like I'm involved in a lot of things. We kind of went all in on the wedding space. I mean, we plan weddings, we coordinate weddings, I officiate weddings, we own a wedding venue. I license and appoint wedding officiants. I train them, mentor them. Like I'm really deep into that. Whatever someone's trying to do, I probably could help you do it.
Yeah.
Now, the licensing process is someone would have to basically reach out to a registered religious denomination in the province of Ontario. So anyone who's a marriage officiant falls under that category. It's a really broad umbrella with the Office of the Registrar. Once they've reached out and connected to them, find one that's kind of aligned with their values, with their beliefs, all that type of stuff. They do some training. We do this through Togetherness Collective. That's the name of the denomination that I'm the governing official for. So someone would come to us and say, we want to be an officiant. We take them through our training, help them understand the values, beliefs, understand the legal side of this. There's lots to go through. After that, they're licensed from the Office of the Registrar. They're able to solemnize marriages in the province of Ontario. It's there's not a lot of great information about it online. We've tried our best to be as transparent as possible and eliminate some of the ambiguity and the gray area. A lot of the people that reach out to us say, basically, dude, your website was the most clear thing I found. Like it literally outlines everything on there, and it's fantastic. That's what I want. I want this to be an easy process for you.
Yeah, and that's very good to know as well. Like right on the togethernessscollective.org, I think it was.
That's the one, yep.
If anyone's looking to become a licensed officiant, please check that out as well, because that has a lot of great insight on there. Touching before, you mentioned that you're the same person in person, online, everywhere. And I just really want to touch on your branding, because your branding is very on point. I took a look at your Instagram. You can clearly
Cool.
see your comedy. Took a look on your website as well. And I know you love vanilla lattes, and so does your wife. You have her order on there. It's just like you're being very good at showing your authentic self on social media. And even though that's not your goal per se, you're building a very good online brand, like an online social media brand as well. Like you're doing exactly what I guess like an influencer would be doing. How did you get to this role where you just felt so comfortable? Have you always been so open online, or did you kind of have to ease into showing your authentic self online, or how did that build?
Yeah, I get asked that question really often by new officiants specifically, saying, a lot of times when you start a thing, we have a tendency of looking at the people way down the road, and we say, well, man, how do I get to that? I mean, that's not attainable, but they don't see the steps or the time that it took to get there. It wasn't just like I woke up one day and all of a sudden like we had this brand built. It's little by little over time. It's kind of moving the needle a little bit as you go to and figuring out which direction are we trying to go with this thing. We intentionally separated the Instagram accounts of Maeck Weddings Planning and Maeck Weddings Officiating, because like I'm slightly more outrageous with the officiating stuff, and I want to I want that to show through what I do. So I think it was 2020. I met up with a good friend of mine. He's a videographer. He does tons of video for a lot of people. Tim Musa, he's great. And I said, look, I want to make a video. It's kind of a crazy idea, and so I kind of tossed some silly ideas his way. We turned it into a video. It did pretty well right away, and I was like, man, I think we're onto something. Like let's keep going with this and see where it goes. And it's been 4 years, almost 5 years. We were filming late last night at a studio, and it's just silly what we're doing. And he's like, man, imagine talking to 2015 Jeff and saying in 2025 you're going to be doing green screen crazy stuff for Instagram and YouTube. I'm like, yeah, but here we are, man. Like it's fun. The branding stuff I find hilarious. I find not the majority, but a significant amount of the leads over the past number of years are now coming through Instagram. There's a really good evergreen effect of those videos that people find them over the course of time. And they're like, dude, I saw a video of you doing a crazy thing. Like, this is hilarious. Like, this is exactly what we're looking for. And that's kind of my hope too, is to keep people entertained. Some have it be somewhat educational, like a little bit, but mostly just a laugh. I mean, there's enough crazy stuff going on. I like to keep people having a good laugh. But yeah, we're going to keep pressing in that direction, having some fun. And we've been doing it in a way too, trying to help venues as well, kind of expand their reach, because these videos, just by being slightly outrageous, tend to perform well. And that's fun too. So there's a lot of work to do. That's kind of an outlet for me to feel like this is creative and fun and different.
Nice.
And it's helpful.
Yeah, nice. And that's really good insight on seeing how outrageous and funny you are online too. It's being like, hey, that's what I'm going to get at my wedding, and that's what I want. It's really just like a portfolio for you right away of like, this is who I am. This is what you'd be getting if you hired me right away.
Yeah, for sure. And it's I mean, it's similar across every business where um, there's a significant amount of people doing the same thing, and then you need to figure out, well, how am I different? How do I stand out? And the way that you stand out is just by showcasing yourself. I mean, nobody's going to be better at being me than I am. So I'm just going to lean into that and be the most Jeff online I can, because I'm removing myself from the competition of everyone else that's advertising a similar way. And that's just not how I market myself.
Yeah, nice. And switching over to Maeck Weddings, I know you and your wife started this business, and there's so many people that are like, never work with your spouse. I've worked with my spouse before, and I feel like me and my spouse work well together. I don't know why people say that, but when you guys started, like, how did your work-life balance?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm thinking back a little bit, because it's certainly evolved over the years of figuring out new systems, new backends, management systems, all that stuff. Yeah, I think it's just, it doesn't ever go from, so I guess there's like a preface to that answer. The question of like, when you go full time, like, how do you know? How do you do all that stuff? I mean, there's a lot of years in there that I was working full time and doing full time weddings. And, even as we were starting the charity too, like, I was working full time basically to finance doing that. I mean, charity lawyers don't do it out of the goodness of their hearts. They're actually quite expensive. And so it was over time that we've grown, and I've been able to back out of things a bunch of years ago to do it full time. We just created systems in place. We understood very quickly that if we don't spend intentional time and carve it out in the calendar just to be together, those are the times that we start to get you get a little bit short with each other and things like that, because you're kind of just working nonstop. You go for dinner, you're talking about weddings, and it's like, well, hold on a second here, like, let's not talk about weddings right now. Let's shelf the business. And so carving out space and being really intentional about saying, let's just not talk about this stuff. We're not dealing with that. We're not working on that. We're not sitting in bed doing emails, although that happens literally all the time. But yeah, you got to find systems that work best for you. And in someone's relationship, we do it. I'd like to think we do it really well. We understand each other incredibly well. Also, our calendar is slammed every day, and it's a great problem to have, by the way. But we understand, hey, Jeff's doing this thing, Michelle's doing emails. We got all of it's going on, but you got to be incredibly organized as well. And if there's one thing we are, it's absurdly organized.
And that's a great way to be. And how do you go about navigating differences in opinions or disagreements?
I think we're good. I know one of the things I'm good at is I understand what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And there are certainly things Michelle is infinitely better than I am. Most things, if we're being honest. And so from a planning organizational side, this lady is unbelievable how she manages all that stuff. That's not Jeff's strong suit. I mean, if you were to swap the roles and say, okay, Michelle, why don't you just grab a microphone and speak on random stuff in front of a group of 500 people? Well, she might not love that. But for me, I'm like, man, who cares? Let's figure something out. Like, it'll just be hilarious. And so we really try to figure out, hey, why don't you do the stuff that you're really good at? I'll do the stuff I'm good at. That way, we're not feeling bogged down by the little things that, there's probably things in your own life that you don't enjoy doing. If you can outsource them or have someone else do it, it's like it frees you up to do the things you're great at. And that's what we try to do with each other. So
nice.
I think that's kind of the way that we've handled it.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And what advice would you give to like a newer couple that's looking to get into a business together?
I do think calendar management is, I mean, it seems obvious, but it's super important. It's very easy for us to slam the calendar and create zero time for ourselves. We have to forecast ahead and say, these are date nights. We're not booking anything in there, because it's just as easy to not do that and be like, oh, like when a time comes up, we'll go on a date night. It just won't happen. Like something will fill in that spot and it won't happen. So if you are starting a business with your spouse, carve out intentional time to not do work, be with each other, be able to recognize when the other person needs a break, some space, some time, whatever it may be. Encourage it, because you can get burnt out if you're going too hard, too long. Honestly, you can get burnt out. So
Yeah, and I saw on your on your website that you have a team of other coordinators. Are you to the point where you have like Maeck Weddings planning and coordinating multiple weddings on the same day, or does your team work all together on one wedding at a time?
Great question. Yeah, we routinely will have the whole team out at different weddings on the same day. And that's, I mean, it's tricky when you're trying to build a team of great people because obviously they're a representation of who you are. And so we've got to be very careful with the people that we hire. And we've just been super lucky to end up with these like amazingly, not only really talented people, because that's obviously really important, but people we really trust, people we think are wonderful humans and are going to be great. And so we've got these wonderful people part of Michelle's team. And like there'll be a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday where everyone's out, everyone's at different weddings, and it's a ton of fun, and it's crazy. And I'll normally have a bunch of weddings that I'm officiating, and we're just shooting messages back and forth of having a good laugh of what's going on. It's good.
Nice. And for the younger audience that's listening in and they haven't gotten to wedding planning yet, what are typical things you look at when you're planning a wedding? I know you have an officiant, you have a photographer, oftentimes a coordinator, but what else can be something that's often slipped or missed that is an integral part of the wedding?
For a couple that's trying to plan their own wedding.
Yes. Or for a successful wedding that makes it memorable.
Yeah, I think at least what I find is a lot of couples do things because they think they need to do it. If I'm speaking specifically about a ceremony, they think they need to have certain elements in there. I'm like, look, you don't have to have any of that stuff. There's some legal requirements. Everything outside of that is stuff that we're adding because it's fun, it's cultural, it's whatever it may be. When they're planning a wedding, they're like, okay, well, we need to have a 4-course meal. We need to have a DJ and a dance. We need to have this and that. You don't need any of that. I think at the onset, you should figure out, what do you value most? Let's start with that. And if it's, I mean, not everyone values 200 people in a room sharing a meal. Some of them, it's 20 people in a small venue. We just did one in Tuscany, and it's like they actually just valued an incredible experience for a small, close, tight group of their family. And that was the right way to celebrate. We do elopements where, we do these helicopter elopements on islands. We do private boat elopements, adventure elopements, because those people value the experience of getting married. I mean, when you're planning an elopement, that's for you. When you're planning a wedding, you're kind of planning it for your guests. Like that's basically how you got to view it. And so you allocate portions of your budget based on what you value most. If you value photo and video most, a larger percentage is going to go to that. If you value a private location, like an estate, more of your money is going to go to that. And then you're going to spend less on decor, less on things like that. Don't let people pressure you, and don't spend too much time looking at stuff on Instagram and TikTok and saying, man, like that's the type of wedding I want. That's not the type of wedding you need. And we like to help couples figure out what are the most important things for you. Let's create that. And it's almost beginning with the end in mind and saying, if you could picture yourself at the end of the night, what does that night look like? Let's work our way backwards to get there. And it's kind of how we would do it.
Nice. Yeah, and that's great advice to give to new couples that are looking to get married soon. And your wedding with Michelle, how did that experience look, and how does that play into your business that you guys have today?
Our own wedding?
Yeah, your own wedding.
Yeah, we had a 3.5 month engagement. I was in Guatemala with our charity that we have. We build homes in Guatemala. So I was living in Guatemala. I knew we were going to get married. Man, it's such a weird time. Everyone kind of goes through this period where all their buddies are getting married. And for us, I had all my friends were lined up that year to get married. And I was like, man, here's the deal. We can either get married in a few months, or we got to wait another year until everyone's wedding's done. I was like, I don't want to wait a year. I just want to be married. 3.5 months. I was in Guatemala. She planned everything here. Very funny. They like tour venues, and she's touring them solo, obviously, because I wasn't around. Venues are kind of like, you actually engaged? Like, this dude for sure gonna like propose? Like, you're not even. So it's very funny. She booked a venue before we were engaged. Flew to Guatemala, proposed there, came home, got married right away, and we had a very conservative budget. At the time, I was doing ministry, and you certainly don't make any money doing that. But we just knew we wanted to be married, and to us, so again, as we were planning our wedding, being married was the most important part. And we worked within the means that we had. We didn't try to extend it beyond that, which I know is a tempting thing to do as a couple, to say, well, let's push the budget just a little bit more. We just didn't want to do that. One, I don't think we could, but two, that wasn't important. It's actually just important to be married. Yeah. So
that's a beautiful story.
Oh, thank you, man. Quick engagement, get it done. I knew this was the woman I want to spend my life with. I wanted to be married, and got home and got married.
Nice.
Like a month and a half after I got
home. I'll take some notes. And this is, I guess, a test if my girlfriend listens to my podcast or not. So it's like, can I talk about my future engagement? But we've been together 5 years, so it's like she's pressuring me on it, and I'm like, I'm working on it. So honestly, let's hope she doesn't listen to this episode, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyways, that segues great into Guatemala. That was going to be my next topic. What inspired you to start the Togetherness Collective?
Yeah, cool question, man. In a previous life, I was a flight attendant. I was in university. I was traveling a bunch, and it's an uncommon experience for people to do some traveling during university. But I had the thought, I don't love paying for this. Like, I should be paid to travel. And so I became a flight attendant for that exact reason. But I was also missing an incredible amount of school. You can imagine when you're on flights around the world, you're not really going to class very much, and that's not ideal. But so I traveled a bunch, was at some incredible spots, really beautiful places. But in 2009, I accepted a contract at a university where I was leading a discipleship program, a gap year adventure program based out of Winnipeg. We'd spent 3 months in Guatemala. First time I went there, it was just a different feeling than anywhere else I'd visited. Like the culture, the people. I was really drawn to it. Spent 6 months there. Have been there 6 or 7 times now. And I knew from the first time I went there that I'd be coming back. And I just didn't know in what capacity. And a lot of times when people are working away at businesses, they're trying to get to a certain place. Sometimes it's really hard to know where you're going until you look backwards and you understand this was actually part of the process. Like, I had to do this stuff to get here. There's no way I could have just leapfrogged and ended up here. So I met some incredible ministry partners there, people I wanted to support. There's some home building efforts there that I really wanted to be able to support. And I had a dream as a 23-year-old to fund a home. I just thought that'd be a cool life goal. And through Togetherness Collective, we funded our first home actually last year. We're funding another one when we go in a month, and we're looking at funding a few homes per year is something that we want to do. I'm bringing a team down to help build it. And you go down there and do the work, and you feel like you're having this incredible impact on somebody, but ultimately it's you that comes back changed. You see and experience some things that will change you, and there's kind of no going back. And so that's the work that I feel super lucky that I'm involved in, and I get to bring other people into that world too. I have a vision of bringing groups of couples that I've married to Guatemala and say, look, like, I think this will be a good thing for your marriage. I mean, you're going to a third world country. There's not some of the luxuries you're used to. We're going to do some work. It's going to be hard. But I think it's going to be a good thing for your marriage right on the onset. So that's kind of my vision for it, is to bring people there to experience it.
Yep. And I believe on Togetherness Collective as well, you have a portion of your website dedicated for those who want to join you in Guatemala. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they can check out more info. We've got videos. I bring a videographer as well to kind of document it, so our donors and our supporters can see what's the work that we're doing, who are the people that we're involved in, or involved with. Yeah, it's a very fun thing. Last year when we were there, we were actually there on home dedication day, which is a very unique day to be there, where they're passing the keys off to the family that was receiving the home. And you want to talk about like one of the most emotional days of your life. It's like seeing a family who's getting the keys to a place and knowing that her two kids and her mom that live together, generationally, that's changed. Their whole family is changed. It's a very cool thing. We got lots of videos on that stuff too, just to show people the power of what this is like.
And how do you balance your work in the wedding industry as well as your passion for giving back to the community with the Togetherness Collective?
That's a work in progress. It is. I do think sometimes I get, I'm not criticized, but people ask like, "Hey man, you work a lot, or how do you manage this stuff? You're doing a lot." We've got a small wedding venue that does between 400 and 500 ceremonies per year, and we've got Maeck Weddings that does a lot of weddings per year, and we've got the charity, and I highly enjoy it. I really enjoy the work, and I think if you can find something that kind of fuels you that way, where it doesn't feel like exhausting but energizing, you're in the right spot. And you kind of level up. I mean, as things have grown across all three things, I embrace the new challenges because it forces you to figure out a solution. And sometimes the solution is like, man, the volume is there's too many emails. It could be the case. So you got to figure out, what's the solution here? How do we figure this out? And so balancing it, we try to take some weekends off throughout the year. I'm getting better at it. I took a lot of Sundays off last year intentionally, so I'm not taking any weddings. These are days to hang out as a family, chill out, hang out with friends. I am doing that as well this year, and my plan is to continue to carve out time to say, look, people are going to ask for that time. They're going to try and book it. You got to say no. That's hard to say no, but you got to stand by that no. Like, look, I set this time up. It's for my family. It doesn't matter if someone wants to pay you to do a thing. Just don't do it. The other side of it is that day's going to come up, and you're going to say, why did I say yes to this? Like, this was the day I was supposed to have to be at home.
Nice. Yeah. And that takes a lot of strength as well. And especially when you're building a business too, it's like you feel like you need to take everything, right? But like having the power and the strength to say no, really aligning your priorities of, I need time with my friends, I need time with my family. It's strong. It takes a lot of power to do.
For sure it does. It's especially, depending on the time of year too, it's especially tempting to say yes and just say, what's another wedding? I mean, obviously I show up and I'm fired up and I'm excited and I can't wait to do it and it's energizing and a blast. But at the expense of taking time away from my family too, I kind of need to really guard that time and
Yeah.
protect it.
And for someone looking to get more involved in their community or join a social outreach program, what advice would you give to them?
I with our businesses, and maybe it's just kind of also maybe it's just part of who I am. I'm not sure. I don't ever feel obligated to give. I just want to. I just feel like look, I just feel so lucky with the things that we have that there's no reason for me not to want to give and not to want to be involved in things and not to want to whether it's mentor someone early on in their business, say, look, let me help you out with this thing, or whether it's be involved in some of the community initiatives in our KW, or whether it's helping finance some of the stuff. If you've got the means, that you do it, and there's no time that you regret being helpful or being involved in some of the community stuff, because there's some really wonderful people doing some amazing work that goes highly unnoticed in our
Mm.
communities, and often they're underfunded. And for me, it's part of what we do, and we want to support them, we want to encourage them, because at the same time, by donating time or finances, it's also an encouragement to them to say, look, you're doing good work, it's not going unnoticed, we want you to keep going. Yeah, I would. So anyone that's looking at doing that stuff, I'd say just do it. You don't need to figure out what is the exact right thing in that moment. Just do something, and correct course along the way. Maybe it's not the right place, no problem. You'll find out another spot to get involved and do that.
Yeah, sweet. And thank you so much for that insight. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Jeff. That's all the questions I had for you. But if someone wanted to find you for your services, you and your wife's businesses, or get involved with Togetherness Collective, where can we find you? What are the best locations?
Yeah, a couple different spots. On Instagram, it's at Hey Jeff Maeck. That's probably the fastest way to kind of see all the different brands and see the outrageousness. If people are into that as well, they can check it out. Maeck Weddings is our wedding planning officiating business. DTK Chapel is our wedding venue, and togethernesscollective.org is our charity as well. So kind of three different ways depending on what people are looking at getting involved in. I welcome to, I get lots of, and Brian, I got to say in the same way that you did it, I love getting messages from people on Instagram that are videos. To me, it's the best thing ever. It's like the most personal touch. You reached out with a video. I was like, I love this dude already. I was very excited about that. So my encouragement to you, man, keep reaching out to great people. You're amazing at this stuff. Your social media presence is excellent. I love that you're trying to be educational. Not that you're trying to be, that you are being very educational for people as they navigate an otherwise really difficult space. So I'm thankful for people like you that do this stuff, man. And I'm happy that I could come on and chat about this as
Sweet.
well.
Yeah, and thank you so much for those compliments. I'm gonna envelop in those. But for those who are listening who made it this far, please give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed this episode. Listen on to the next one, and then thank you so much, Jeff, once again for coming on. See ya.
You got it, dude. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no
See ya.
worries.